All right, I want to talk about Mac Jones for a second. I find it a little bit interesting, just sort of, how he's played, and I like making these videos of, I need to come up with some sort of like name for it. I was thinking like, a scouting report or something like that. But you just looking at the numbers and looking at a lot of splits about different things, I think you can learn a lot about a quarterback from looking at the numbers. Not as much as you can about watching the tape, but I've made a thousand, close to, I think, over 2,000 film studies at this point. So I've got a pretty good amount of film down. Let's look at the numbers now, and I think for Mac Jones, he's certainly an interesting type because he's a rookie who we haven't seen rookies play like this too much. He's really played well. So let's talk about kind of the splits and what's interesting about him. The first fascinating stat that I see when it comes to Jones is this one. So just so you know what you're looking at, this is going to be when he's under pressure, when he's kept clean, when he's blitzed, or when he's not blitzed. This is where he ranks in terms of PFF grade and passer rating. So not necessarily like what his passer rating is, obviously. His passer rating isn't 8. He was 8th in passer rating under pressure, if you look at that top right corner. So, under pressure, he performs pretty well. According to, compared to his peers, he's actually pretty good under pressure. So he doesn't, have too much trouble with that, which is fascinating because I remember earlier on in the year, he was struggling a little bit when he's under pressure. So that's not a complete flip, which is nice to see. Now, when he's kept clean, he's been kind of mediocre, and part of me wonders how much of that is just, the Patriots receivers, how much of that is himself, and how much of that is scheme. Because while we kind of equate all of this to quarterback, obviously it doesn't all go to quarterback. But he is someone who actually has performed better when he's under pressure than when he hasn't, which is funny because what was the thing that people kept talking about with Mac Jones was that, well, he can't move around as much. That's the downside. It's how high is his ceiling. Well, he's actually doing better than all the other rookies when it comes to performing under pressure. So that's nice to see. Meanwhile, when he's blitzed, so here's another fascinating thing. So he does perform, again, to be clear, his numbers are still better when he's kept clean than when he's under pressure. Just relative to the rest of the league, it's better, just so we are clear there. But also when he's blitzed, he's much better when he's not blitzed than when he is blitzed. He's 8th in PFF grade and in passer rating when he's not blitzed, and he's 16th in PFF grade, so that's not like, that's solid. But then the passer rating falls all the way to 25th. Worth noting, this is of about a sample size of 40 because it's quarterbacks who have taken 20% of their team snaps. So there's about 40 in each of these categories. So that's fascinating to me, especially because he doesn't get blitzed as much as the other rookie quarterbacks get blitzed. I think the narrative is, oh, he gets rid of the ball quickly. He reads defenses. We shouldn't blitz him as much. Well, no, actually, you still want to blitz him. And whether that's him or the Patriots offense, you can be the judge. But if you're, if someone is watching this video who's a defensive coordinator, if you're, Sean McDermott watching this and trying to come up with a game plan, blitz Mac Jones. Make sure you consistently blitz him, although they might not throw the ball again like they did last time, so who knows. Now moving on to this next chart. So this is play action. Same two categories, but there's a third category now, percentage. That's just the percentage of that's, the higher you are, that's where you rank in terms of percentage of times you run these plays. So basically, they run play action 15th most with Mac Jones under center, or just, as a quarterback for the New England Patriots. And as you see, they're much better without play action in terms of, well, at least I guess I should say Mac Jones is much better when there's no play action. However, the scheme itself ends up being pretty even. Like in terms of what the actual value is, it's kind of why I like using both passer rating and PFF grade. PFF grade will give you maybe more of an accurate representation of how they played, but passer rating will give you a more accurate representation of what the actual outcome was. And that's the goal at the end of the day, is not to make your quarterback look good, it's to move the ball down the field and score points. And Mac Jones has played well without play action. They don't need play action, and I think what this tells me is that when there is no play action and when you just need guys to get open, he can have about a similar effect as when you're scheming stuff open for him. So you can scheme stuff open and that works, but also you don't need to. He can get stuff going on his own. So, they actually perform better relative to their competition when there's no play action. So the idea of them being only being successful because of the running game, and Mac Jones is only successful because of the running game, that's just not true. The numbers don't back that up. This is also very impressive for a young quarterback. So he ranks 37th in percent of pressures where the quarterback shares some responsibilities. So you want to be furthest away from number one, right? So 37th, it's out of, I believe, 39 total players. So he basically is nearly at the end of, he's almost at the best in terms of guys who they don't create pressure. Mac Jones is not the reason why he gets under pressure hardly at all. He avoids pressure, and the 12th ATT, that means average time to throw. So he's getting rid of the ball quickly, although he's not getting rid of the ball immediately. He knows when he has to get rid of the ball quickly as well. So that's very impressive, and especially for a rookie. Most rookies really struggle with this aspect of football. Jones has come in and not only been, not struggled with it, he's been incredible at it. This next chart is also very fascinating. So what you see here is this is the distance he's throwing the ball down the field, and then from left to right, you have PFF grade ranking, passer rating ranking, and then the percentage of time the New England Patriots do that relative to the rest of the league. So again, it's not the actual percentage, it's where they rank in terms of the percentage. So 20 plus yards down the field, they don't throw it that far 22% of the time. They rank 22nd in percentage, highest percentage of throwing the ball 20 plus yards down the field. What's interesting is you look at the percentage, they stay relatively balanced throughout. I mean, a little bit more in that 10 to 19 range, but for the most part, they'll throw anywhere. They make you cover every aspect of the field. That's kind of what Josh McDaniels likes to do. And what you also see is that for Mac Jones, his PFF grade is pretty much mediocre everywhere except for the 0 through 9 range. That's where they say he truly excels. The passer rating is a lot better when he's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. That, to me, feels like a quarterback doesn't have too much value in that. You look at the difference between the best quarterbacks and the worst quarterbacks at that, it's not a huge difference. So I kind of just sort of write that off a little bit. But it's still, interesting, I think. And the team itself is having success there. And then I think the other fascinating thing is, while Mac Jones is performing solid in 20 plus yards down the field, the team isn't. Only 26th in passer ratings. So maybe you could say PFF is just wrong about it. I would probably lean closer towards, well, they're just not completing some of these plays that far down the field. So that's maybe why a lot of people have said, why don't you kind of, unleash Mac Jones a little bit? It might have nothing to do with Mac Jones. It might just be that the team hasn't really been able to get these deep shots that we kind of thought they might be able to in the preseason, even though the receiving core has been very good at, anything from 19 yards down the field further in. And finally, one last chart, nothing too crazy here, but it's a little bit interesting as well, is I think another aspect that, if you're a Mac Jones hater, what people have said about Mac Jones is, well, he needs to be on script. He needs these plays to be happening immediately. On the less than 2.5 second plays, his passer rating is 11th in football. His PFF grade is 11th in football. When it's more than 2.5 seconds, which usually means that's right around when, if your play doesn't work, it probably means that you're holding on to the ball for more than 2.5 seconds. And as you see, the numbers do get a little bit worse relative to competition, but not massively. PFF grade only drops 2 spots, and passer rating drops 6 spots, so there's a jump there, but it's not a massive one either. So is there some truth to the narrative that Mac Jones needs plays to be on script for things to work out? Yeah, there's some truth to that. You could argue that the Patriots' offensive line is very good, so therefore that 2.5 seconds actually goes a little bit longer than other teams of poorer offensive lines. Although I should mention the difference between a great offensive line and a bad offensive line doesn't actually change that much in terms of pressures. It does, but all pressures basically happen in between 2 to 3 seconds, so it's not as dramatic as you might think. All right, so what does this all tell us? A, it tells us that Mac Jones is good, and he's doing the little stuff good, and he's good today. And this kind of checks out of, okay, well, yeah, this makes sense of why Mac Jones is playing well, because he's doing this stuff well that other rookie quarterbacks don't do. He avoids pressure, whereas most young quarterbacks go directly into pressure, that kind of stuff. I think you can make an argument and say, well, then what is Mac Jones' ceiling, which is something that he's, that keeps being the criticism. Because I think it's a little bit fair in this case, though, because I think the flip side is, well, if he's already doing a great job at avoiding pressure, he's not going to get better at that. This is pretty much where he's going to be in terms of avoiding pressure, right? Just one example, whereas someone like a Trevor Lawrence, who has been much worse at that, he's been horrible at that this season, but at least there's room for him to grow. Whereas for Mac Jones, in the easiest ways to grow, he's already good, which is good for now. But in terms of like the ceiling question, has he already reached his ceiling, I think is a fair question. But there's still things he can improve upon. So it's not like completely that way. But yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think about all this? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.